My name is Fiona Gilbertson, and I'm co-founder of Recovery Justice. The other founder is there, her name's Suzanne Sharkey. She is now Vice Chair of LEAP, who you'll be hearing from later, an organisation of police officers against war and drugs. And also Anyone's Child, Martin Powell's there from Transform. Anyone's Child are a group of families who speak about the harms of drug policy. So, Recovery Justice was set up about 5 years. Recovery Justice, is that there? We set up about 5 years ago, and we kept listening to people who had had problematic issues with drug use, being kind of co-opted onto this, like drugs are bad, drugs are dangerous, we need to control drugs. And as somebody who's had a really problematic relationship with all sorts of drugs in the past, it just didn't sit right. It just didn't sit right. And so we got together, and what we do is we reframe our stories in policy context. And what we say, or what I believe now, is even as somebody who represents, well, I don't represent anybody, somebody who is in a group of the 10% of people who will have problematic relationships with drugs, the drugs were never as problematic as society's response to me as a drug user. So yeah, I have had issues with drugs, but my biggest issue when I was really seriously needing help was criminalisation and stigma. And it's really weird. I mean, after all, Edinburgh, I don't live in Edinburgh anymore. And I feel really emotional standing here. 30 years ago, I needed a drug consumption room. I desperately needed a drug consumption room. And I found one. Do you know, and it was unregulated, and it was in an apartment where we all shared the same windows. And we were terrified because our doors were being kicked in, and we were being brutalised and stigmatised by the police. We were being arrested on a daily basis. And when I stand here, like I'm standing alone, do you know, the people who were in those rooms with me are dead. Before their deaths, they were jailed more times than they were ever offered treatment. They had their children removed before they were offered any help. They became infected with HIV and hepatitis C. They committed suicide on their own, or they committed suicide in prison. These were people who, drugs were the only thing that kept me from killing myself at that time in my life. And then the state tried to kill me and my friends, quite systematically. So yeah, I do. I get really emotional. And I'll get to the hope bit in a minute, but I realised there would be a lot of talk about what drug consumption rooms are, who uses them, all the pathology around that. So I just want to take you on a really kind of different journey today. And this is the audience participation bit, which you've all been so looking forward to. So I'm going to try it 2 ways. Who's willing to put their hands up if they've used a drug consumption room in the last week? Right. Okay, so not that many. Here's a drug consumption room. This is a regulated drug consumption room, and I'm so sorry because smokers really are stigmatised in our society, like you can really straight on. Yeah, so who's used one of these? Just keep your hands up. What about this? This is an unregulated drug consumption room outside a hospital. And I'll get to this hopefully a bit later. When we talk about drug regulation, we're not talking about a free-for-all for drugs. We're talking about something that looks a lot more like how we regulate nicotine, which is one of our most dangerous drugs in society. So, sorry you guys, could you just keep your hands up a minute? So I'm going to show another drug consumption room. Maybe some of you have used this in the last week. Anybody used one of these in the last week? Keep your hands up. Okay. This is a licensed drug consumption room. And it's regulated, and it's legal, and it's licensed. This, while it's not quite regulated, is legal. Let's say this is somebody's living room. I picked this, I put in a search for 35-year-olds drinking. And I did that specifically because Scotland calls its cohort of drug users who are IV drug using an ageing cohort. This is your ageing cohort of people who use alcohol. And I just wanted to show that because we so stigmatise and pathologise people who use certain types of drugs. So if there's anybody in this room under 35 or over, if you were using heroin rather than alcohol, you're an aging cohort, sorry to tell you. So again, hands up, who put their hands up for all of those? Thank you. Oh, and the rest of you are feeling quite good, maybe until I put this slide up. Anyone used one of these drug consumption rooms in the last week? Thank you. I picked this one, I did want to use it. I like the name of it. It's just across the road from here. It's Sophie's really good. I'm not on commission. This is regulated. And if I was to show you a picture of Starbucks, it might be regulated and unfortunately not taxed. So, I just wanted to challenge what a drug consumption room is. Because when we sit in these rooms, we make all these. We like to feel worthy, and we like to feel that we're doing good for other people. And actually, everybody uses some sort of psychoactive. Most people use some sort of psychoactive substance. And hopefully, in doing this, I want to highlight some of the acknowledged systematic stigma with certain drugs. Now, Scotland is at a tipping point. I really do feel that we have a media who's coming on board. Some of the language is just appalling, but it's the media. We have politicians who are involved in this for the right reasons. And this will be a vote winner. You know, we all know politics involved. But I'm really, really proud to say that I've worked with Ron Cowan, and I don't think we have that in Westminster. You know, we have so many opportunities here. So we will get to create truly effective policy based in human rights for everyone who uses drugs. Not just the 10% that we can all feel really, really good about not being in that group. Here's another drug consumption that I want to talk about. I mean, I think this looks pretty lovely. I would like to go to here. This is a cannabis social club. I would like, and Recovering Justice will be holding a series of events where we talk about other kinds of drug consumption rooms. Let's be really clear, the war on drugs is a war on people who use drugs, and certain people who use drugs. Cannabis is less harmful than alcohol or nicotine and sugar, but it's less toxic than all those things. However, a drug charge for possession of this will be life-changing in the lives of people who are caught on a daily basis in Scotland. We like to think that's not happening. If you think it's not, John Arthur's there, you can speak to him about that. It's still happening here. Yeah. Okay, I'm not a public speaker. So, we're drawing arbitrary lines based on an inherently racist policy And when I talk about the war on drugs, it seems kind of sensational. But the war on drugs, Richard Nixon put the war on, he didn't start it, he really forced through drug policy, which is what all our drug policy is based on. And it's come out that he wanted to suppress the black communities and the peace communities. And he couldn't just burst into people's houses on a daily basis. He had to have a good reason to do that, because America would have been outraged. So there's a statement out on the slide where he stated quite clearly, if we identify heroines with the black communities and cannabis with the peace communities, we have an excuse to raid them on a daily basis. That is the policy that you, as police officers, are acting out on a daily basis on our streets. So, as we can see, we're drawing arbitrary lines based on an inherently racist policy implemented by a US president who was later impeached for corruption. We're drawing lines between the drugs we use and the drugs others use based often not on harm, but on stigma and class. All substances have various risks and benefits, but our situation often defines those risks. Had I had access to a drug consumption room, I would not be standing in front of you 30 years later. I lost my friends to HIV, having HIV myself, and having a criminal record that has had an impact on most of my life. So, I'm no longer a homeless, angry teenager. I'm white, I'm educated, I'm housed, and I'm privileged. And that's a slide I didn't show you. Most people get to use drugs in their homes. We are implementing these policies on people who have nowhere to go to the toilet, never mind consume drugs. It's in homeless communities. As Kirsten will tell you, there's just been an outbreak in Glasgow in the homeless community. So, stigma busting. This is what my drug consumption looks like today. It was in Kensington, and I was using ayahuasca and 5-MeO DMT with lovely Mexican shaman. It's a substance I use to treat my complex post-traumatic stress and grief. After 17 years in long-term abstinence-based recovery, I thought, I can't struggle anymore. Abstinence-based recovery works for 10% of people. So we have to be looking for other solutions. I'm not willing to let the 90% die for some recovery agenda. I'm just not. This is how I treat my health, my mental health. And obviously, when I was in this space, it was Kensington, there was low risk of the police breaking down the door. I think there would be an outrage. It was 3 doors down from the Thames house. And I was not at risk. So I was not at risk of either state or gang violence. So all I'm asking for today, oh, there's another picture, isn't it? All I'm asking for today, I want the same for my other friends. This is a drug consumption room. So for my fellow drug users, people who use and consume drugs, it's not concessions we want, it's equal rights, it's opportunity for a safe space, and it looks like this. The war on drugs is not a war on drugs. It's a war on people who use drugs. It's a war on the families of people who use drugs. And Scotland, we get to choose. Thank you.